So over the last couple of months, myself, along with other progressives, have been really disappointed with Bill Maher's show, to say the least, because he's been doing something that I like to call rich-splaining, where you talk down condescendingly to ordinary Americans and you tell them that you're right and they're wrong when you refuse to listen to anything that they have to say. So, for example, he tells us that we should have voted for Hillary Clinton, and those of us who were too puritanical and didn't think Hillary Clinton was good enough, well, he says that we should go fuck ourselves with a locally grown organic cucumber. I know you all remember that. So what he's doing, it's harmful because he's shifting the blame that politicians should have when they lose onto voters, and he's saying if the politician loses, well, it's not because they ran a terrible campaign like Hillary Clinton, it was because you failed the politicians. So after months of rich-splaining and talking down to progressives, he finally had someone on his show that gave him a taste of his own medicine. So Russell Brand was on the show, and Bill Maher asked him what he thought about Hillary Clinton. And as someone who typically advocates against voting altogether unless a politician offers voters something, Bill Maher didn't really like what Russell Brand had to say.
You have expressed reservations about voting itself. Where are you on voting now?
Well, Bill, I think that the dominant political parties have a real obligation, as Harold was just explaining, to present the voters, by which I mean human beings like me, real vision, real possibilities, and to transcend the idea that they are merely managers of bureaucracies whose role it is to prevent us being, I suppose, bludgeoned by lunatics like the current one. So I feel that what
But you would agree that it would be better if people had voted for Hillary Clinton, right?
Yes, I wondered if you would ask me that.
Come on, please.
Well, look,
we're getting along so good.
do you think, like...
Hillary Clinton would not be pulling out of the Iran deal or the Paris climate deal or...
It's really... You know I respect you and I admire you very much, and I think you're a courageous man. One of the problems I have in instances such as this is that politics became so centralised, realistic opportunities weren't offered to ordinary people, and when a candidate like Bernie Sanders emerged, he was not given the opportunities that he deserved. I never voted in my country.
What do you mean he was not given the opportunities?
There was
He was given every opportunity. He ran in America. People voted for him, not as many as Hillary.
I wonder why this occurs.
Because...
I mean, you're talking now about the manipulation of boundaries and borders and the way that certain political figures are managed towards positions of power and authority. That exists at a party political level. The Democratic Party had preferences. Their preference was Hillary. You got Hillary. Hillary lost. And I don't think that this is not... I think you can tell from a glance that I'm like not a Donald Trump guy.
No. I'm trying to come to common ground with you. Let me give you one example from this week. While all the craziness was going on, the Republicans did not reauthorize a program called CHIPS, Children's Health Insurance Program.
Appalling.
Yes, you know of it. Okay, it's been there for 20 years, bipartisan. 9 million kids now are not going to get, you know, what they need, the doctor visits, checkups.
Yes, this is dreadful.
So I think for those people, voting matters.
You are quite right.
It's easy to say, oh, voting and they're all bad, but for those people downstream, it would have mattered if he wasn't president.
I entirely recognise I had a comparable problem in our country because I'd advocated not voting. I said, well, don't vote until they give you realistic opportunities, until there are politicians that speak directly to you, that speak for ordinary working people. Until then, why would you participate in this spectacle? You're being invited to participate in something that doesn't offer you realistic opportunities. The candidate for the left at that time was, I would say, a comparable candidate, someone that was a neoliberal, centralist politician that didn't oppose the corporate interests and elite interests. This allowed hegemony to continue. Now, I think that if the left isn't brave enough to occupy the space where ordinary people whose lives are in difficulty and in trouble, if a politician on the left doesn't say, we are interested in representing you, we want to take care of you, ordinary Americans, then the bizarre, lunatic rhetoric of a man like Trump is suddenly appealing. We have witnessed this. The alternative is in the United Kingdom that Jeremy Corbyn, a genuine socialist candidate, has come to the front, and I voted for the first time, and people care
What
now.
were you like on cocaine?
So on behalf of all progressives, thank you so much, Russell Brand, for saying what we've tried to communicate to Bill Maher for months now. Now, look, I don't agree with Russell Brand on 100% of the issues. I actually disagree with him when he says that you shouldn't vote at all unless politicians have a true message that appeals to you, because I think that's harmful, because by not voting, by just staying home, then you're abandoning a lot of down-ticket progressives just because you don't like who's running at the top. So I would never advocate for someone to not vote, but what I would advocate for is that you shouldn't vote for someone unless they speak for you, because staying home, that's not advantageous for progressives, because what that tells members of Congress and presidential candidates is that they don't have to represent us because we're not willing to come out and vote. But if we show them that we are willing to come out and vote no matter what, I think that that actually empowers us. So I don't agree with Russell Brand there, but what he said overall to Bill Maher was really important. Now, Bill Maher, he didn't say this explicitly, but he hinted that the 2016 primaries were completely fair. He said Bernie was given every opportunity. He ran in America. People voted for him, not as many as Hillary. But it's not that simple, Bill. He is denying all the shenanigans that took place in 2016. I mean, the DNC literally colluded with Hillary Clinton before anyone else announced their campaigns. They already basically decided that Hillary Clinton was their candidate. So we had reports from Time, for example, that Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton colluded with each other to set a limited debate schedule, because presumably this would give Hillary Clinton the advantage, since at that time she had the most name recognition. And when you look at how the DNC tried to sell these bullshit false narratives about Bernie Sanders to journalists, when you look at how they moved up red states on the primary schedule to benefit Hillary Clinton, because knowing that she's more conservative, she might win these states, more so than Bernie Sanders. I mean, Bernie Sanders didn't have a fair shot. In fact, I would argue that it's likely he could have actually won the primary if the DNC didn't choose to just brazenly rig it. And that's something that you can't ignore. So by saying that Bernie Sanders had every opportunity, he didn't have every opportunity. And that's just what the DNC did. When you take into account the fact that the mainstream media ignored Bernie Sanders and there was basically a blackout of his campaign, you don't get to say that he had a fair shot. Now, thankfully, Brand actually said something about this. He said the Democratic Party had preferences. They wanted Hillary. They got Hillary, and she lost. He also talks about how Hillary Clinton was basically maneuvered into that position, and what he was getting at was that the primaries were rigged, effectively. That's what he was saying, in my opinion, or what it seemed like he was trying to communicate to Bill Maher. But I think that you just have to come out and say it explicitly. The primaries were rigged. Some people may say that that's hyperbolic, but if you are trying to do everything in your power to give Hillary Clinton this unfair advantage and handicap any of her opponents, if the race itself isn't fair, then that competition is rigged. It's rigged in favor of one candidate over another. I think that's undeniable. So you can say that the term rigged is a little bit too hyperbolic, but it's undeniable that the DNC tipped the scales in favor of Hillary Clinton to the detriment of Bernie Sanders' campaign. And you don't have to take my word for it. You could read the WikiLeaks emails. So another thing here that Brand talked about that I want to touch on is how he came out to vote for Corbyn because Corbyn was offering a truly progressive message. But, Bill Maher, you could tell that he didn't want to hear what Russell Brand was saying. So he basically changed the subject and said, well, what were you like on cocaine if you're this fired up off of cocaine? Basically, I don't think he was trying to be rude. I think that clearly him and Russell Brand are friends, so that's just the relationship that they have. They kind of nag on each other. But I mean, Bill, if you really want to have a discussion and figure out why Democrats have been wiped out at every single level of government, not just at the top, then you actually need to fucking listen to what people like Russell Brand are telling you. Now, look, I don't know about Russell Brand's politics, but if you truly are genuinely interested in figuring out why it is that Democrats keep losing, then you can't keep shutting down dialogue when you finally have the opportunity to chat with someone who's trying to tell you why Democrats lost. You can't keep blaming voters for the failures of politicians. Hillary Clinton chose not to campaign in Wisconsin, and she lost Wisconsin. She chose to shun half the base, and a lot of them just stayed home and chose not to support her. So if you really want to get to the bottom of this and figure out why we have Donald Trump, then you need to listen. But all that Bill Maher does is he brings other people on his panel that reinforces his own ideas about why it is that Hillary Clinton lost. And that's because, in his view, the voters failed Hillary Clinton. It's not the other way around. It's not that we knew Hillary Clinton was lying and she took so much money from Wall Street. We knew that she couldn't possibly represent us, even if she wanted to, because she had already sold out and made a ton of promises to them. I mean, there's an endless amount of reasons you can cite as to why Hillary Clinton lost, and all of them point to what Hillary Clinton did, not what voters did. So I'm glad that, Russell Brand was there to actually give Bill Maher some insight as to what ordinary voters were thinking. But I mean, you can't shut him down if you are actually trying to figure out what Democrats can do to reform to appeal to voters. You actually need to listen, Bill. So, on one hand, I'm really glad that Russell Brand told Bill Maher what he needed to hear, but on another hand, he didn't really want to listen. That was apparent. So this was a bittersweet clip, but in the end, if Bill Maher doesn't want to listen, then he doesn't get to keep complaining and, questioning why it's the case that Democrats keep losing. We're trying to tell you, but you don't want to listen, Bill.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.